Greetings, fellow detectives. Wizard Kitten here, bringing you a new Nancy Drew analysis video. Today's video is brought to you by the patrons over at Mystique Manor and by all the official Fellow Detective channel members. If you too would like to support the channel and gain access to exclusive features, check out patreon.com/wizardkitten to become a patron, or click join next to the subscribe button to become an official fellow detective. We all know that Nancy Drew is an impressive detective, but I personally sometimes forget that she is an internationally renowned sleuth. Of her 33 cases, a solid third of them have been in a country other than the United States. It's one thing to solve mysteries in your local community, but it's a whole other game to solve mysteries all over the world. Knowing that Nancy has been to so many places and solved so many international cases begs the question, which ones are the best? You all know I love to rank niche topics within the Nancy Drew series, so let's go for it. Which international mysteries are the best, and which are the worst? To define this, we need to talk about what makes for a good international mystery. In my opinion, if a mystery is going to take place in an international location, then the location needs to be given special attention. The language, food, unique environments, history, music, traditional customs, and unique features and characters included in the game should all be representative of the location. As I examined each of Nancy's international cases, I considered each of these elements, determining whether or not they were even present in the game, and if they were present, how effective they were at conveying the game's location. As a result, I think I have come up with a solid ranking of the international cases from worst to best. Please be warned, this video may include plot or character spoilers for any of Nancy's international cases. You have been warned. So, without further ado, let's get started. Number 13, the Shattered Medallion. The only thing that this case does well from an international mystery standpoint is that some of the characters are actually from the representative country of New Zealand. Even still, most of the characters are not from New Zealand, and this mystery does almost nothing else to indicate that we are in New Zealand beyond naming locations, talking about sheep once in a while, and showing some native plants. But that's literally it. Not even the music is representative of the culture or country and just feels incredibly generic. This case could have been anywhere in the world with mountainous terrain and has no personality to it whatsoever. Number 12, Ransom of the Seven Ships. The character representation of this mystery is deeply inauthentic and limited, and the rich language, food, and cultural customs of the Caribbean are not even remotely represented. Even El Toro writes his journal in English, which at the very least would have been an opportunity to include the influence of the Spanish language on the region. While the beaches are lovely and the music conveys some tropical beach-like vibes, this mystery just doesn't hold up as an international case because of its lack of depth. Number 11, The Silent Spy. This game includes an array of Scottish foods, music with a distinct Scottish feel, and 3 of the 4 characters are from Scotland. Beyond that, this game misses a lot of opportunities to really emphasize Scotland. The locations include a hotel room, a courtyard, a gym, a house, and a cabin, with a very far-off view of Loch Lomond. None of these locations feel unique or even particularly Scottish. Scottish language also is not included, and several fellow detectives from the United Kingdom have mentioned finding the accents themselves really inauthentic. Finally, much like Shattered Medallion, there are little flashes of Scottish culture or history, like the Scottish tartans puzzle or seeing the exterior of the Ten Raven pub, but it all just feels woefully superficial. Number 10, Tomb of the Lost Queen. This game excels in immersing us in a vibrant part of Egyptian history by allowing us to explore a tomb in detail while treating us to a soundtrack that enhances the atmosphere of Egypt. We also get to play a traditional board game, Senet, and actively participate in the deciphering of hieroglyphics while learning about mummies and Egyptology. Do the hieroglyphics translate directly to English? Why, yes, which is why this game isn't quite at the top. The language representation is misleading, and there are very few, if any, references to the cultural identity of present-day Egypt, including no Egyptian foods. Additionally, at least half of the characters are not from Egypt, and we do not see any parts of Egypt beyond our own little tomb. This is a classic example of acceptable attempts to portray a culture that just fell short or didn't deliver fully enough. It's there, but it could have been better. Number 9, Labyrinth of Lies. The music of this game is absolutely wonderful and does a great job of conveying Greece. This game also gets points because the entirety of the plot revolves around Greek mythology, which is a huge part of Greek history and culture, at least as many people understand it. Unfortunately, though, that's basically where this game starts and ends. While centering around the myth of Persephone and Hades is a cool idea, modern-day Greece and the depth of Greece gets left behind. We don't get any Greek food, the inclusion of the Greek alphabet is minimal, and perhaps most disappointing, the environments don't even convey Greece in a meaningful way. The facade of the Phidias Cultural Center looks Greek, sure. The museum has some Greek art, sure. But beyond that, most of the environments are actually the theater sets, which are more fantasy than they are traditionally Greek. I appreciate the museum activities that help us actively learn about Greece, like the architecture puzzle, for example, and I appreciate that half the cast is at least Greek, but it just feels like more could have been done to celebrate and really emphasize this iconic location. Number 8, Haunting of Castle Malloy. Now we're starting to get to some better representation, because Haunting of Castle Malloy is actually a pretty solid international mystery. Only one of the characters is actually Irish, which is a pretty significant drawback. This game also could have integrated more Celtic or Gaelic language, and we could have had more food representation. But including the Screaming Banshee Inn was a huge plus. The inn allows us to experience a pub feel and even mix drinks and participate in playing traditional music. Speaking of music, the soundtrack pulls heavily on Irish instruments and sounds and adds so much to the ambiance. Castle Malloy also has really strong environments that situate us in Ireland, like the bog, the cliffs, the pub, the standing stones, and a legitimate castle. The game also includes many Irish traditions and folklore, including the Banshee myth, leprechauns, herbs, and Celtic sabbats and astrology. It does a solid job, but suffered from most of the cast being British instead of actually Irish. Number 7, White Wolf of Icicle Creek. Much like Castle Malloy, this game really delivers in some areas, but just misses the mark in other categories. The music is excellent and conveys a feeling of a cold and snowy environment that also takes inspiration from indigenous instruments and sounds. Alberta, Canada has the benefit of being an English-speaking country, so there isn't a lot of language to incorporate, though there is certainly a dialectical way of speaking represented by Bill Kessler. While I know that many Canadians will say that Bill's accent is horrendous, it is at least an attempt to further place us in Canada. This game also does a great job of including Canadian-appropriate activities, like snowshoeing, skiing, ice fishing, snowmobiling, and snowball fights. The snowy landscape, the mountains in the distance, the frozen lakes, and the log cabin designs also really help situate us in a Canadian winter wonderland. An argument could be made that this game just did snow really well and not necessarily Canada, and while I agree that we could have gotten even more Canadian-specific elements, it's clear that the developers were consciously working to convey Alberta in the making of this game. Number 6, Curse of Blackmore Manor. This is the first game on the list where almost the entire cast is actually from the game's country, England. The only outsider is Linda Penvillin, which actually works really well for the game's plot and message about feeling out of place or unimportant. Furthermore, Curse of Blackmore Manor allows us to eat traditional British foods, takes place on a spooky British moor in a centuries-old British manor, and helps us dive into the rich history of England by following different generations of Penvillins. Since the primary language of England is, in fact, English, the game doesn't have to strive to incorporate linguistic influences. Despite this, there are some attempts at British accents, poor ones according to several British fellow detectives, but attempts nonetheless. Old English and ruins are also included in several places to show how language has changed over time, which is a really neat feature. The music is also undeniably fantastic. What makes this game more middling than a top-tier international mystery is really that it underutilizes the location and the traditional customs of England. Because we are trapped within Blackmore Manor for the duration of the case, we don't get to see the beautiful Moorish landscapes or any additional British landmarks. We are also limited by only experiencing the traditions of one family, the Penvillins, rather than British culture as a whole. It's honestly really solid, but it could have capitalized on its location even more. Number 5, Phantom of Venice. Now we're into the top 5, starting with Phantom of Venice. This game excels in music, language, traditional customs, and environments. The music is beautifully Venetian, and we even get to experience singing gondoliers. Italian language is used throughout the mystery, is present in background conversations, and becomes a critical part of certain puzzles. We get to learn about multiple facets of Italian life and history, including artistic mosaics, carnevale, scopa, gondolas, markets, and religious relics. Finally, we get to visit multiple locations throughout Venice, so it really feels like we are exploring the city. This game does, however, fall short as an international mystery in a few places. First of all, while we do get to visit multiple locations throughout Venice, these locations are honestly really shallow and are more visual than they are interactive. There's little to no exploration in every single location, which really feels like a missed opportunity. Furthermore, of the characters that we do get to interact with regularly, only one of them is actually Italian, and she's kind of awful to be around. There are several secondary and phone characters that are Italian, like Enrico Tazza, Sofia Leperace, and Nico Petit, but these characters don't play nearly as significant a role as the British Colin Baxter and the German Helena Berg. Also, while we do get to eat gelato, for a country whose cuisine is internationally influential and renowned, there is a shocking absence of Italian food. This game has some really great elements, but doesn't get a perfect score. Number 4, Danger by Design. Danger by Design was Nancy's second international mystery, and the first to take place in a country where the predominant language is not English. Despite this, of the 5-person main cast, only one of them is actually French. There are some secondary French characters, like the vendors at Square du Vert Galant Park and several phone characters, but it just feels like this game missed several opportunities to include more French characters. However, Danger by Design does include authentic French cuisine and a heavy focus on the culinary arts. The music has a distinctly French feel. The game's focus on fashion aligns with France's trend-setting and artistic reputation. There are puzzles that directly require learning French, and the language is included throughout the game. We get to see several locations unique to France, including Square du Vert Galant Park and the catacombs, and the traditions and history of France are alluded to several times, such as Nancy's Mona Lisa painting side hustle, and historical references to World War II. Ultimately, this game does a great job of making us feel like we are in France. And if it had just included more French characters, I think it easily could have been considered the best international mystery. Number 3, Sea of Darkness. This is a great international mystery, but let's talk quickly about where it falls short. Icelandic cuisine is technically represented by the fish arranging puzzle, but this could have been done in a way that actually looked like the food being represented rather than just stylized pictures. Also, while I love the music and think that it does such a fantastic job of setting the atmosphere and theme of the game, it isn't particularly Icelandic, but rather more nautical or ethereal. But these two elements aside, this game excels as an international case. Almost the entire interactable cast is Icelandic, with the exception of Dagny, who has a good reason for being there. Icelandic language is included in a puzzle, and while I would personally like it to be included a bit more, it does at least have a presence. Where this game really excels though, and why it ranks so highly as an international mystery, is in the environments and representation of traditional customs. Fishing, sailing, and snowmobiling are represented. Iconic Icelandic landmarks like lighthouses, pubs, ships, ice caves, mountains, and the aurora borealis are prominent. There is no daylight given the time of year. Snow is constantly falling. Volcanoes and weather are discussed. Icelandic artifacts can be found in Soren's Tourist Center. All of the characters are dressed in fabulous sweaters and winter gear. And Nordic home design is represented in Magnus's cabin. This game hits so many important Icelandic elements in really deep and beautiful ways. They aren't just there, they feel like an integral part of the game. Purposeful choices on the part of the developers to truly make us feel like we are in Iceland. Number 2, The Captive Curse. Perhaps a controversial case for the number 2 spot, but this is actually a stellar international mystery. Hear me out. First of all, this is the first game on this list where the entire interactable cast is from the game's home country. All of the characters are actually German. There are multiple secondary characters who are German, and German language is used throughout the game and plays a critical role in decoding several clues. The music conveys a distinctly Bavarian feel, and traditional German foods, including pastries, sausages, and even the coveted Black Forest cake, are readily available for consumption. This game also excels in representing the traditions of Germany. It was a brilliant choice on the part of the game developers to have Castle Finster be a sort of historical reenactment castle, because the characters are dressed in traditional costume. Additionally, this game emphasizes tabletop game culture, glasswork, and Grimm's fairy tales, some of Germany's biggest international claims to fame. The Captive Curse also brilliantly includes Renata, a character who represents the tradition of verbal storytelling. The only thing that could have made this game a better international mystery would be in the environments. While Castle Finster is absolutely stunning and includes several spaces that are beautifully designed to convey German architecture and castles, such as the dining room and the courtyard, this is just a sliver of Germany, and we are trapped in the castle for the duration of the mystery, with the exception of the spooky woods, of course, but those aren't necessarily super German. Overall, though, this is a fantastic international mystery, and one that I think gets overlooked despite its brilliant ideas and execution. And finally, the best international mystery, number 1, Shadow at the Water's Edge. If I were going to nitpick at anything in this game, it would be that the Japanese accents as a whole could have been stronger, and we could have gotten to see more Japanese food besides just stylized bento. But again, those would be nitpicking, because this is a stellar international mystery. To start, the entire interactable cast of characters is from Japan, and Japanese language is included throughout the case, and even, get this, spoken by one of the characters at one point. The music is also absolutely gorgeous, and not only conveys traditional Japan, but modern Japan. On that note, this is perhaps why this is such a strong international mystery. We do not just get one note of Japan, or one location of Japan, but rather we get to explore both the traditional architecture, music, and traditions of Japan, while also exploring these same elements from a modern point of view. This not only helps to convey the location of Japan, but directly supports the plot and deeper meaning of the mystery, the push and pull, yin and yang, the conflict between tradition and progress. The ryokan is a stunning traditional location that includes traditional rooms and sleeping arrangements, a beautiful Japanese garden with a lesson in rock gardens, lessons from Takai in writing, tea ceremonies, and origami, traditional kimonos, a spot for tea in the main lobby, Japanese baths, and even folktales about Japanese ghosts, i.e. the Yuri. Then, by taking the train to 3 separate locations, we can learn about and experience the modern influence of technology, pachinko parlors, Japanese micro-apartments, and kawaii fashion and style. It is abundantly clear that accurately representing Japan and giving players a meaningful way to experience all sides of its culture was a primary concern of the developers, and I give them major props for the stellar execution. So there you have it, fellow detectives, my ranking of all of Nancy's international cases, from worst to best. As I've mentioned throughout this video, a good international case really comes down to accurately representing all sides of a country's culture. Honing in on one particular element simply isn't enough, and limiting representation due to constraints can also lead to a case feeling particularly inauthentic. By tackling all aspects of culture, food, language, music, traditions, history, and iconic environments or locations, players will really feel like they are in the intended location. If you are going to have an international mystery, then it is important that it is done well, with intention and attention to detail. This might be something that the current developers of Mystery of the Seven Keys may want to consider in their representation of Prague. Nudge, nudge, hint, hint. Nothing superficial, please. But anyway, what do you think, fellow detectives? What is your favorite international mystery? Do you agree with how I ranked Nancy's international cases? Let a Wizard Kitten know in the comment section down below. If you really enjoyed this video, please consider hitting that like button or tipping me for the video with a super thanks next to the download button right beneath the video. If you would like to come join a fantastic group of fellow detectives at Mystique Manor as a patron for the channel, gain access to exclusive content, and support the making of more content like this, please check out patreon.com/wizardkitten. I also have channel memberships with exclusive badges and emojis to use during streams and in the comment section. If you'd like to support the channel by becoming an official fellow detective, click join next to the subscribe button. Please feel free to follow the channel on Instagram or Discord, linked in the description box down below. And as always, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more Nancy Drew and Sims 4 content. Thank you so much for watching, fellow detectives. I will see you soon.